It's my pleasure to introduce one of my coworkers. Judy is a licensed clinical social worker. She has worked in the community mental health since 1981. She's been with the center since 1985. During her time at the Community Counseling Center, she's provided therapy, supervision, and administrative duties. She also served as our clinical director for over 10 years. She now works part-time at the Community Counseling Center, providing outpatient therapy, and she teaches the mental health first aid classes in our 5-county service area. Judy lives in Cape County and is an ordained minister, works part-time at Abbey Road Christian Church. Before Judy gives her presentation, I would like her to share a story about her Vizsla show dogs that's very entertaining. And let's give Judy a Cape West Rotary warm welcome.
I think the hardest thing about making presentations is making all the equipment work, but I think that says more about my generation than anything else. Linda wanted me to share with you about my Vizslas. We have had 3 now, and the first 2 were the moms of Brazen Rock Vizsla kennels. That's the word. The Brazen Rock Vizsla kennel. And 3 of our offspring have shown at Westminster Dog Show, and one of them actually won Best of Opposite in the show, not this year, but last year. So we have, there are 3 of us involved in the kennel, and we take care of the moms, and the other partner in the kennel take care of the offspring. So we're very proud and very pleased for the success of our dogs. Mental health first aid. Many of you have had physical first aid training, may still be required to have it. Mental health first aid is modeled after physical first aid in terms of its purpose. The program itself is an 8-hour program, and we divide it, of course, into morning and afternoon. The morning program concerns itself with the definition of mental health first aid, problems in the United States, how to use the action plan, and then we begin to talk about specific disorders. In the afternoon, we continue talking about some of the disorders and have the opportunity to apply the first aid action plan in our small group work. So what is mental health first aid? It is the help offered to a person developing a mental health problem or experiencing a mental health crisis. The first aid is given until appropriate treatment and support are received or the crisis dissipates. And I will say that the mental health first aid program has become increasingly popular around our country as a result of some, as you are aware, pretty negative things that have happened. Why do we need mental health first aid training? Mental health problems are common. There's a lot of stigma still associated with having a mental health problem. Many people are not well informed. They have many stereotypes. And professional help is not always on hand, and people often don't know how to respond. People who have problems often do not seek help. In preparing to teach this class, I learned that on average, an individual who has a diagnosable mental health problem will not seek help for approximately 10 years, which is a long time, needless to say. A mental disorder is a diagnosable illness that affects the way a person thinks, his emotional state, and his behavior. It may affect one of these, two, or all three. It disrupts the person's ability to work, carry out daily activities, and engage in satisfying relationships. Now, this is mental disorder. This is not mental crisis. Any of us, all of us, have experienced crisis periods when emotionally we have been really distraught. But this is mental disorder. Here you have some statistics. In any given year, there are approximately 20% of Americans who experience a diagnosable disorder. You will notice that schizophrenia, which is the one we hear the most about in the news, is only 0.45 of 1%. It is a very low percentage of people who actually experience schizophrenia, and of those that do, an even smaller percentage are ever violent against other people. We hear about them, though, because when they are, it creates quite a public problem. It's hard to realize for someone who has never had a mental disorder, but a mental illness can be, in some ways, more disabling than a chronic physical illness. There are lots of reasons for that. One is you very often can see a physical illness or can see the symptoms of a physical illness. So in some ways, it's easier to point to it, to talk about it. The other factor that makes them very disabling is most mental disorders begin during adolescence, sometime between 12 and 17, 18. And it is during this period that so many of the major developmental stages occur in terms of a young person establishing identity, establishing a peer network, going off to college, getting a job, maybe getting married. And if a person has a significant mental illness during this period, even though you may stabilize the symptoms and stabilize the illness, they still will be behind their peer group. They will still need to make up what they have missed in terms of social and psychological development. The disability from moderate depression is similar to the impact from relapsing multiple sclerosis, severe asthma, or chronic hepatitis B. Severe depression is comparable to quadriplegia in terms of the disability. And again, the disability refers to the disruption in daily life. Recovery is the process in which people are able to live, work, learn, and participate fully in the communities. Recovery is a word used for many different things in our society, but in terms of mental illness, recovery means that an individual is able to cope with his or her symptoms and, to whatever extent possible, lead a productive life in the community. I know one of the issues that we face at the Community Counseling Center with some of our more chronic clients is that the mental health system becomes their community and their social network, and we strive to help them reintegrate into the larger community. Recovery may be living a fulfilling and productive life despite the disability. And for many, recovery is the reduction or remission of symptoms. The large green square is the area in the illness continuum where mental health first aid can intervene. It is primarily useful in prevention and early intervention. You have a little bit of treatment, but mostly that refers to providing good information and referral sources. This is the Mental Health First Aid Action Plan, ALGE. And again, if you've had physical first aid, you know about the ABC Action Plan. These are the steps that one is taught how to apply in terms of someone who is experiencing an emotional crisis. Always one is assessing for the risk of suicide or harm, and that is something that is ongoing anytime you have someone who is emotionally upset. Listen non-judgmentally, which is a very difficult thing to do. It is difficult to set aside your own opinions, biases, judgments, but when you're talking with someone who is emotionally upset, they don't usually want to be preached to, they want to be listened to. Give reassurance and information, and this is where it is important that you as community members know certain key referral sources for mental health problems. Not everyone who has a mental health crisis requires professional help, but if the reactions are ongoing and enduring, knowing where to refer them for professional help is certainly a plus. And then, of course, encourage self-help and other support strategies. Depression and anxiety are among the most common mental illnesses. They can have similar signs and symptoms and can frequently co-occur. This is just an idea of the impact of clinical depression on the workforce. Major depressive disorder lasts for 2 weeks, has to last at least 2 weeks, and affects a person's ability to function day to day. These are types of mood disorders that people can have. I'm just going to move through these fairly quickly. You can get a sense of them. The signs and symptoms of depression can be physical, behavioral, and psychological. Now, an anxiety disorder differs from a stress reaction, from the kind of butterflies that I may have felt as I was getting up to present this presentation. It is, again, more severe, lasts longer, and more importantly, interferes with one's ability to function. I seem to have shown you a series of slides that are not the introduction, so let me just bring it to a close since time is of the essence. Mental Health First Aid offers 2 separate programs. One is for adults who are concerned or working with adults, and the second is for adults who are concerned with or working with youth. Each class is an 8-hour class. You receive a manual filled with resources. Currently in Tate County, the classes are offered at the Community Counseling Center. Because of the support of the Community Counseling Center, the only fee is the $20 for the manual itself. On your blue sheet, you have a schedule of classes remaining in 2013 and then the schedules for 2014. My brochures are in process. I would invite you to spread the word about the program to anyone and everyone who is interested or might be interested in knowing more about the average person, non-mental health type response to people with emotional crises. You have my contact info, and if you just let me know which class you're interested in, then I know which classes will fill. The other handout that I gave you is on the grief recovery method. This is also a program that the Community Counseling Center is going to support. It is an 8-week, 2-hour-a-week seminar, workshop for people who are experiencing losses of many different types, any kind of, certainly death, divorce, but loss of job, loss of health, most any kind of loss that one might experience. I don't have dates yet for those seminars, but that will be forthcoming. Do you have questions?
What percentage of mental health disorders are actually chemical in nature or exposed to chemical?
Well, more recent studies would suggest that everything about us is chemical. And the way our genetics and the way we are reared affect the way the brain chemistry is put together. So in my mind, it's fair to say 100% in some way. The more pronounced ones that you hear about are bipolar and major depression, and those are the ones you hear about, the low serotonin levels, and that medication very often is very successful in controlling those symptoms. With schizophrenia, which is another mental disorder that we don't quite know why it happens. We can identify different sets of explanations for it in different people. But the positive symptoms, the psychotic symptoms of hearing voices, or seeing things, are very often amenable to medication to stabilize them or control them.
Almost daily in the paper we will read of somebody who has shot up either the business or the family or this or that. And then as this unfolds, we learn that they have some sort of mental disorder.
Right.
Would you say something about that?
Oh, there's so much that could be said. First of all, it's very difficult to force someone to receive mental health treatment. By and large, people have to be willing and seek it out. If an individual is acutely dangerous to himself or herself and others, then we can legally commit them for a 96-hour evaluation in a hospital. However, if during that 96 hours they no longer are judged to be a danger, then they have to be discharged. It is for this reason, I think, that many of the people that we read about in the paper who have done these horrendous things, they have encountered mental health care to some extent, but very likely have not stayed with it Mental health treatment is not a quick fix. If you, for instance, take medication for depression, it can take 2 to 6 weeks before it has a positive effect on your mood. That's a long time to ask a person to wait if they are suffering. Certainly, I think there's not adequate mental health services available in general. Quite frankly, our hospitals have been closed down and our prisons have been built. Approximately 50% of people who are in prison would qualify with a diagnosable mental illness. That's pretty high when you think about it. Most often you will hear about, I think, the paranoid schizophrenic who harms someone. Paranoid schizophrenic is someone who hears voices, very often command voices, not necessarily to harm anyone, but as the word paranoid suggests, they are frightened. They will often attack in order to protect themselves from being attacked. So you get into that kind of behavior. I don't know if that answered your question, but it's a little information.
What is Alzheimer's?
Alzheimer's is part of the diagnostic manual that we use. Alzheimer's is, as you know, a form of dementia. It very certainly has been demonstrated to have a physical cause in terms of brain deterioration. Usually, someone with Alzheimer's and his or her family will come to us initially and be referred for support, sometimes care, sometimes to the psychiatrist for medications which can slow the process down.
Have you ever been asked to testify in court?
I have been asked to testify, thank the good Lord, only once. And that was many years ago, and that was not in a situation of where a person had harmed another. It was in a child custody situation. And I was asked to do the impossible, which is testify as to whether or not someone can be a good parent. I did, but it is a difficult thing to judge from the outside. Most of us in mental health make a concerted effort to try to avoid the court, but it happens.
I want to revisit Bill's question because I was actually going to ask a very similar question, Bill. When you get in a situation where, like what happened in Connecticut, where perhaps, and invariably every time this happens in the past, a parent or someone has said, yes, they have demonstrated some sort of behavior and, nothing was ever done, whatever. Is there a battery of tests that, if I had someone in my family that I was thinking, man, I'd like to get them some help, and then have them come to you or however it works, and you perform a battery of tests on them and say, there's something wrong with this individual. We need to remove him from society for a little while. Or what happened out there in Colorado with that guy. I mean, look, I don't know if there's, what do we need to do?
Certainly there is a battery of psychological testing that can be applied. Even with the results of psych testing in hand, it can talk about probability, likelihood, possibility. It is not obviously 100% predictive. Once someone reaches the age of 18, he or she is in charge of what he or she does. And it's very difficult for parents or other loved ones to get them into treatment if they're not interested, not willing. What do we need to do? I think we need to continue to reduce the stigma associated with mental health so that people are more likely to ask for help early in that 10-year period instead of toward the end. There are days when I think our laws need to change a little bit about commitment. Historically, we swing from one extreme to the other, from it's too easy to take someone's freedoms from them and institutionalize, or it's too difficult. We don't seem to have a way of finding a good mental ground. Those would be two things that I would hope to change. You know you can't predict someone's behavior. Someone who's never demonstrated any problems can be placed under the appropriate stress and behave very erratically. That's what makes it so hard.
When Barbara and I used to volunteer in the emergency room at South Hospital.
I had forgotten that that's where I saw you
Sunday
too.
night.
Yes, on Sunday night. Yes.
We would get one or more what we call frequent flyers. Who were people who were in the care of community wherever they lived was somewhat independent of it. And during the week, they would take their medications and do stuff. And on the weekend, they say, oh, I feel good. And next Sunday night, they're bouncing off the ball.
Correct.
And so then we got
Yes.
what do we do to fix that?
What we have tried to do is people with chronic mental illnesses. We have attached a caseworker to them who sees them every week. And we have provided ongoing education to them about what will happen if they go off their meds. Someone newly diagnosed generally has to go off their meds and have a significant problem, I'd say at least 3 times before they're convinced. Because again, if psychotropic medications do what they're supposed to do, you're not supposed to know you're taking it. There's not supposed to be a huge change in how you feel. It's supposed to be, the med is supposed to be returning you to whatever normal functioning might be defined. And so if I've been doing great for 3 weeks, obviously I'm cured. And it takes the frequent flyer syndrome very often for people to understand that.
And that's in that regard. There's all kinds of medicines nowadays that are implantable devices or just slow release things you put in your arm or whatever that they're good for 3, 6 months or whatever. Are none of the psychotropic drugs implantable that way so we have an opportunity to get off the meds?
I honestly don't know about implantable. I know that there are time release psychotropics that you take once a month and they're good for a month. I don't know about the implantable process. But that is a development of late. And there are injections which are very often used for the more severe folks because they get rowdy about taking their meds. I'm supposed to quit. Thank you so much.